Alright guys, I'm going to get started real quick. So thanks for coming out. This is Steel City Hackers, Steel City InfoSec. My name is John Ziola. This is the Proximity Attacks Lab. We have a couple of different stations set up to play with things, and we can just kind of talk about it if you like. It's a pretty laid-back event. A couple of things really quickly. So I wanted to say big shout out to Arista for providing the money for us to be able to do this and for me to be able to buy all of these toys that we have. Thank you, Arista. And they also bought us the beer, so big shout out to the beer. Big shout out to Jamie in the back for bringing it. Thank you to Lynx for giving us the venue, and they also purchased all the food. So that was very nice of them. I also wanted to just mention something really quickly. So because this is kind of a community group, I came upon a technology, I guess a new company called Cyware recently. They're doing work in threat intel and threat sharing, like locally in Pittsburgh, and they're trying to make communities to do threat sharing similar to like an ISAC, if you guys are familiar with ISAC. So if you're interested in that at all, just let me know, and I can, yeah, we can talk about it afterwards. So this is going to be a really quick talk. Usually I try not to talk too much at these labs. It's mostly about getting hands-on with the equipment. But I did want to level set a little bit. If you really want more of the technical details, we did have a talk last month that was recorded and put up online where we talk about the problem with the problem with proximity cards and things like that. So I accidentally a house recently, so I apologize for all of the lack of effort that I was able to put into the labs tonight. I went to an open house and then I bought it. I wasn't really looking to buy a house. I just was going for fun, and then I ended up buying the house. So that's actually the house. And I moved like less than a week from today. So things have been crazy, like with mortgage and different things. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I ran into a lot of issues I just wasn't able to fix because I didn't have time to. So I apologize for that. But I will be updating the GitHub after this event and hopefully fixing a lot of the issues that I ran into. So the basic premise of this talk is one of the 10 immutable laws of security. Hey guys. And that is, if a bad guy has unrestricted physical access to your computer, it's not your computer anymore, right? So if you have unrestricted physical access to something, it's not yours, essentially, right? And that's what this event hopefully will prove, or at least show in a couple of different ways, is that given enough time and physical access and effort, you're going to get it. So what this lab is not about Wi-Fi. We've covered that before. I have scripts up regarding it. I'd be more than happy to talk about it some other time. Tonight we're focusing on different things. This talk is also not about Bluetooth, although I do have some iBeacons and Eddystone things back there. I decided that Bluetooth is enough of its own animal that I might just do a whole another quarter on Bluetooth, because there's tons of fun things. I picked up an Ubertooth recently. I know we've got people in the crowd have a couple of them too. There were some really cool IoT hacks at DEF CON and Black Hat this year that are BLE and Bluetooth Low Energy and Bluetooth that I think we could do a whole quarter on that and be really interesting stuff. So I pushed that out of what we're talking about here. Really the focus is going to be on two technologies, magstripes and RFID. So we'll start with magstripes really briefly, hit RFID really briefly, and then we can kind of break out and play with things. So the way magstripes work is they essentially have 3 tracks on them. Track 1, track 2, track 3, pretty obvious. And it stores the data using magnetism, right? And to show kind of what that exactly looks like, this is a card, that Sammy Kane card, kind of stuck in a bag of a ferrous material, and you can see like these lines up there, that's actually the data. And that's just little things sticking to the magnets and not sticking to the magnets. So it shows you like at the top, I think that's track 1 and this is maybe track 2. And that's what it is, right? It's just ones and zeros in magnets that get read as you swipe through. And this came out with Sammy's mag spoof project, where he was able to make a little device. I don't know if you can kind of see it whenever he brings it up at the front. But you just put it close to something that's meant that you typically put a card through, and it will create the right magnetic field at the right frequency to spoof a device. And actually, I have all of the equipment to make one of those. If anyone's interested, we could do a breakout thing and build those. I'm waiting on like a little button to be able to say like do the start. And those were just back ordered for like a month, so I wasn't able to get them by today. But I have all the equipment to do this, and it's like $10 per. So if you want to give me $10, we can work on it. Or I can just do it for free, whatever. So that's pretty cool. So a couple other quick things about how the tracks are set up. Like I said, there's 3 tracks, and there's kind of a set format for them. One thing that's interesting, this is the format for track 1. There's different formats. This is format B, which is typically used for credit cards and debit cards. And there's this service code in there. And then also if you do track 2, there's also the same service code. Actually, track 1 and track 2 are very similar. They have most of the same information. You can see, discretionary data literally says the same as track 1. The sentinels are a little bit different, a semicolon and a question mark, whereas here it's a %, and then they use a caret and a question mark. So there's some differences, but it's very, very similar. And then there's a 3rd track, which I'm not going to really talk about here, but one interesting thing about the 3rd track is that's what's used in hotel chains very frequently. So you could actually have a single card, and I have one over there, that is both a credit card or debit card and a hotel key in one, because it's just using the first 2 tracks for one and the 3rd track for the other. So that's pretty cool, and I made one of those using the device in the back. So that 3rd digit, so I was talking about the service code, the 3 digits, the 3rd of the 3 digits have kind of these options, 0 through 7 is what that number could represent. And there's different, like PIN required. You could essentially just take the card, rip the information off of it, change this 3rd PIN to say no restrictions, write it to another card, and now you just remove the restrictions from a credit card or a debit card. It's really as easy as that. And this is the reason why, or one of the many reasons why we're moving to chip and PIN or chip and signature, because this is complete garbage, right? This is a joke. Right. Also, one thing I wanted to point out is ATM only PIN required. So a lot of people, whenever they make a bank account, especially in security, they're like, I just want an ATM card. I don't want a credit card or a debit card. I don't want it to be used for anything other than going to an ATM. And some people will, some financial institutions will say that's not possible. We can't do that. You can. You can definitely do that. You just literally make that a 3 and it's done. Yeah.
Would most merchants accept a credit card that had the restriction flag disabled? I mean, it's
restriction disabled?
You just said you wipe that restriction pin, you have an unrestricted card.
If you set it to 1. If you set it to 1, yeah, like you can remove. So on the device, whenever you're swiping it, it makes the decision right then what sort of restrictions to put on you. Do you need to have a PIN? Do you need a sign? Things like that.
Oh, okay.
The signature is actually a little bit different. Sorry, but do you need to do a PIN? That decision is made right then. And actually, with this device, one of the things that he kind of announced, which was kind of known before this, was that you can. So for chip cards, there is a byte on there that says, "I have a chip. Force me to use the chip." Right? You can just disable that, and you won't have to use the chip. You can just say, "I don't have a chip. Force me to use the magstripe." Right? And they can choose to not accept that. Okay. Right? They don't have to accept the card, but most people are because they want your money. Right? So if you wanted to steal someone's card that has a chip in it, you take that, change that bit so it says that it doesn't have a chip on it, and use it.
So why doesn't it authenticate? Doesn't it dial up and send data to the bank and authenticate that you actually had the right PIN or something?
Well, if it's a debit card, there's no PIN. If it's a credit card,
yes,
there's no PIN.
Exactly, right? So running things as credit as opposed to debit and things like that. There is definitely some validation that goes on in the back end, like going off site and validating to like your merchant and things like that, yeah.
But it doesn't, the people you validate to don't enforce the same bits that are
Not always, yeah. So sometimes you can do like offline transactions in those sorts of scenarios too, to support doing transactions whenever like the internet's down and things like that. And in those situations, you could definitely get past with just altering this information and kind of doing whatever. Another scenario are things like ATMs and stuff like that. There's been a lot of attacks on like ATMs where like you go behind it and you just like pull the plug out and then you do stuff. Same thing with like Coinstars and things like that. You can manipulate them to do different things by simulating an internet outage. Coinstar, like they have like the fee that they take, but if you go to whatever, do it a certain, I forget exactly the details, but you go to do it a certain way, but you unplug it at a certain point. It's like, oh, sorry, my bad. This is my fault. So I'm just not going to take the fee out, and I'm going to give you the cash without taking my percentage. Very similar for other scenarios as well. Yeah.
I've seen this in plenty of other people, but it still shocks me when I encounter a new domain and realize just how much is tied together with rubber band and
Yeah, you have a question?
As an aside, I can't say if good for all toners. But if you want to see the magnetization patterns, you just sprinkle toner on the mag stripe, and you can just read that thing, or you can take a photograph and decode it.
Yeah, that's what this is. That's exactly
Code.
what that is. Yeah. Well, it's not toner, but it's very similar. Yeah. All right, so that's pretty much it for magstripe. We can talk more about it afterwards. So RFID, here's some information. You guys pretty much know this. It's used in credit cards. It's used in the magic bands, which I have a couple magic bands over there. It's used in all kinds of things. I have like a Linksys card that comes with newer routers to set up your key. There's tons of uses for this. There's low frequency, high frequency, ultra high frequency. Really, the point is that is where the emphasis, that at least I've seen the emphasis be, is kind of in the low and the high frequency, not as much in the ultra high frequency, unless you get into the I-class devices and things like that. And there's 4 basic components to an RFID, environment. Whenever you're talking about it for access control, there's your host PC, controller, there's the card, and there's a reader. And I can kind of show you that stuff. I have all of that except for the reader over there. Unfortunately, I don't have a reader. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so this is pretty much what it looks like. So I ripped this from the documentation for the actual controller that I have. So this is the controller right there. This is kind of your device where you configure the controller. This would be the reader, which you put in your unprotected area on the outside of a door to badge in. And you connect all with a switch. And then you have connections to like your mag locks or your door switches or whatever to actually open the door whenever you badge in. And then you have a rec switch, which is a request to exit, which just means like for fire code reasons and stuff, you always have to be able to get out of the building. You can't lock someone into a building. There always has to be a way to get out. Those are sometimes buttons, sometimes they're motion detectors, sometimes they're IR. There's tons of different ways to do that. That's also a great way to manipulate these, is people will like throw things under a door, inflate a balloon on the other side of the door, take what are those e-cigarette things and like blow through like the middle of the doors, and it will catch that motion on the other side and open up, things like that. And the Port Authority has been advertising Connect cards, so I haven't looked into these too much, but I've been told that they're the high frequency stuff, the 13.56 megahertz cards. So
Are those cards that will let you ride the bus?
Yeah, exactly. And they're supposed to give you a discount too, so they're kind of pushing people towards them. It's supposed to make, they're changing all kinds of things up recently. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard, like, it's going to be 1 zone instead of 2, always pay on, and pretty much use a Connect card. So lab time, a couple quick things. So I bought these EM4100 cloner kits, or I bought one, and Jamie was great, and he kind of bought his own to help me out with this a little bit. So that's what it looks like. I have one over there. The thought is it's supposed to be able to clone and replay EM4100 cards, which is the 125 kilohertz.
How much is that?
So yeah, this is the cheap one. It's like 30 bucks, I think it was 30 bucks. So I got one, and he got one, and we soldered it all together, or he soldered it all together. It's over there, and it completely didn't work at all. Neither of them worked. So that was pretty cool. So Jamie had an exchange with the manufacturer, and there's potential that there's some sort of a bridge during manufacturing. They said that happens sometimes, so there might actually be like a manufacturing issue. I haven't looked into exactly what that problem might be. So this is another interesting thing. So the controller that I have over there, I was reading the documentation just to play around, and I was like, all right, yeah, optical tamper. It was making it was making some noises. We had it like all ripped apart, and we turned it on. It's beeping at me like crazy. I'm like, oh, tamper thing is triggering. How do I fix this? And I figured out how to fix it, and it doesn't beep anymore. It's actually on right now. But what was really interesting was when I read the documentation, it said it ships with HID with these jumpers pre-installed. So it's pre-installed to disable the optical tamper, which I thought was pretty funny. So fail. That's another fail. Here's another fail. So this is me purchasing the HID Prox Pro, which would have worked great. It was supposed to be here on Tuesday. They actually tried, in air quotes, tried to deliver it on Monday, but because of a long story short, I didn't end up getting it. I actually bought another one. Now it's going to come tomorrow. That's going to be really helpful that I have that tomorrow. So yeah, so much try, so hard fail. I tried. And then here's another thing that's interesting. So a lot of these cards will have the information printed on the outside. So they'll have your FAC ID or your facility code, or some of them do. They have facility code, or and then the badge IDs. A lot of times they'll just have the badge IDs on them though, and you have to guess kind of the FAC ID, which that's only 3 bytes, which is not super hard to guess. And So yeah, so facepalm there. So I thought, okay, cool. You know, if I could figure out what the fact code is, or if it's on the card, and if I can get the badge ID, this will be great. There's this little device that was sold at DEF CON this year called a hack ID. You type in what it is on this pin pad, and you hit OK, and it'll clone it, or it'll send it. You can also brute force forward and backwards. So the thought there is these are pretty much incremental. So they'll have the card ID, and it'll go up in numbers or down in numbers. A lot of times you might want to go down in numbers because it's someone who's been at the company longer would have a lower number. They probably have more access. So that's pretty cool. It's $80. You know, I played with it there. Totally didn't work. So I have it over there. It doesn't even turn on. So that's pretty great. So lots of failures. This is fun stuff. And then one
money to throw away.
yeah, allegedly it's supposed to work. Like I said, I did play with one that actually did work, and I tested it and all that stuff. So I don't know what's going on with this one. And then the last thing is just a quick funny story before we kind of break out. Is actually one of my coworkers told me about this week. I thought it was pretty funny. So for RSA this past year, somebody found out that the towels in their room had little RFID chips in them, and that they could be essentially reprogrammed, and that the access. I don't think it was actually the access. It was the way that they track you in the vendor area was via RFID chip. So like, all right, well, what about I take my valid ID and I put it on my towel, and I can go in and use my towel to check into things. It's like maybe I should just come in with just my towel. They didn't do that, but they kind of postulated in the blog. And so the guy was able to use his towel to like badge in at vendor areas at RSA this year, so that was kind of funny, I thought. So, and then really briefly, a couple honorable mentions. So these are a bunch of tools, and if you go to the GitHub page that I'll send out after this, there's a ton of links at the bottom, way more than this, but there's a couple really cool ones. So Key Sweeper is something we did as a lab before. It's actually, I have one sitting back there. It intercepts Microsoft keyboards and decrypts them on the fly. The BLE key, I'll skip through the ones that we actually have here. Silent Pocket is a pretty cool company that I actually met the guy who founded it at DEF CON, and they do just tons of really cool Faraday bags, like backpacks and wallets and things that actually work. They're way more expensive than the cheap ones you find online for like $10, but they actually work, which is a plus instead of just buying a wallet that says it does RFID blocking and doesn't at all. The RFID Garden, so this is like a 8-year-old project. But what the point of it, what it does is it's a device that you kind of keep on you, and the thought was that we would have tons of RFID chips on us at all times. One in each device, each piece of clothing, multiple in devices. What in your wallet you have like 10 of them, whatever. But you don't always want everybody to be able to read them, which is how RFID works, right? Provide power, get signal back. That's pretty much how it works, except for some of the nicer ones that do handshaking. The way that thing did it is it monitored the airwaves for people trying to read RFID tags that you program into it are yours, and then it would jam the airwaves whenever they were trying to be read unless it was authorized. So that was a really cool project. It was like a bunch of really smart people, I think in Germany, were working on that a while ago, because Germany, really privacy-focused company. But rest in peace. I haven't seen any development since like 2009 on that project. But it was really cool, and I thought it was going to be awesome whenever it came out, but it just didn't take off like it did. Now I'll talk about real quick the Boss Cloner too. So the Boss Cloner, they're trying to commercialize the long distance HID low frequency reading, and I don't know if it does high frequency or not, but it gets it out to like 3 feet, and they kind of put it in this like parcel bag, and they make it like very easy to use and to reprogram a card. They have like compartments so that the reading doesn't interfere with the writing, so you can kind of do it almost at the exact same time, and some cool stuff like that, which I thought was cool. They kind of like streamlined the process of walking past someone walking out of the building, cloning their badge, grabbing it out of your thing, and instantly being able to badge in as that person. They have an app on your phone that makes like a text message sound whenever it was successful, so it doesn't seem conspicuous at all. So that's pretty cool. It's a little pricey. It's like $900, $900 to $1,200, depending on how many orders he gets, how many people are interested in it. So that was cool. And then we can talk about all these other ones too. The Proxmark 3 is kind of the Cadillac of them. I have one over there, and I think we have a second one, right? Yeah, so we have 2 of them sitting around. They're really nice. They have tons of features. They can do, tons of. You can kind of plug in different antennas to them. There's like patches for them and add-ons, and you can do brute forcing on them. There's like a whole laundry list. You can do like spectrum analysis stuff, and they have graphs. It's great. So that's pretty much it. So real quick, so this table over here is all RFID stuff. I have the a laptop plugged into a Proxmark. I've got a controller, which you can see the web UI for if you'd like to see what it looks like on the back end. There's actually like buttons to unlock doors, and you can hear it kind of clicking, unlocking the door, and locking the door. That's also a model that's vulnerable to an attack, like this UDP packet that you can send out that they use for discovery, but it can be manipulated to like remote code execution essentially. And you can, it's a funny attack. So really quickly what the attack is you're able to do remote code execution, and you use that, it's essentially CGI in the website, you use that to open all of the doors, and then it changes the binary that allows you to open and close doors and removes the execute bit, so you can't ever close them again. So they're just like permanently open. So that's a kind of funny vulnerability. That one's actually vulnerable too, but I haven't done it because I have to give that back to somebody.
And you trust us with it.
What's that?
And you trust us with it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if I do. But I'm doing it anyways. I've got a bunch of shields over there too. If you guys want to put like a card in a shield, see if it actually works. I can almost guarantee you that like none of them will, because those are all the cheap versions of things, but it's a bunch of different brands. So I figured if you guys, have that brand, you might be able to or you can even use your own. Like I said, we have readers over there. You can try to read your badge through a blocker and see if it actually works. There was a friend of mine was telling me about how he did a project for his executives recently, and because they were concerned that their cards were going to get cloned. And there's like two slide-in ones, like they're called like clamshells. They're like one's blue and one's like mostly transparent white-ish. Those were the ones that they found were the best, most usable, and they worked very well. So feel free to test them. He also gave me some hotel keys that you can put in there, or you can be brave and use your own RFID tag or ID or whatever. And then I have some other fun things there. I have those EM4100s. These devices, I have them both over there. You can try to get them to work. I have magic bands. I have a Linksys card to like set up your whatever. I have the BLE key, which we can talk about. It's very cool. You kind of like stamp it into your devices, and you can open and close doors over Bluetooth. And it's very inconspicuous, very small. Back there, I have some mag spoofing stuff. So I have a MSR 605, I think, and I have a demo card where I made something that both does credit, that both does a credit card and a hotel key. And you can see how you clone it and stuff. I have the software, and I have a coin back there as well, which is very similar to the mag spoof. So you're supposed to be able to load keys up to it, like cards up into it, and be able to like lock them in. And so you have essentially multiple credit cards in one credit card, so they can actually swipe it at a restaurant. You don't have to hold a bunch with you. That's essentially very similar to what mag spoof does, except mag spoof approaches it a little bit differently, but it still can simulate pretty much any card you want. And the back of that table is more of like a catch-all. So I have the key sweeper stuff there. I have some Eddystone and iBeacon devices. I have the USB condom, which is now called something else, like SyncStop, I think. Yeah, SyncStop. And then I have a really cool device, which I haven't seen for sale anywhere, but I got at a conference. It's a USB cable with a built-in USB condom where you press the button and by default, data is off. And you press the button, it can turn data on. So you just use that like when you're traveling, and no matter what, it won't connect with data, because it literally like doesn't have those cables connected, and you press the button and it lets the data flow. So you don't have to have any protections on your. That's how I charge my phone at DEF, essentially. So cool. That's pretty much it. So grab some beer in the back. There's tons of food over there. Eat, drink, and be merry. So.